Reading is good for us and it's good for our kids. You've probably heard that. If you've got kids, you've definitely heard that. New parents are told to read to their children. It's in every book on parenting and every pamphlet, website or library wall. But we wanted to take a closer look, break it down, and dig a little deeper. The absence of reading in a child's early life can lead to significant deficits in language, cognitive skills, emotional development, and academic success. Makes sense. But think about that for a moment and it becomes really interesting. Emotional development, what does that really imply? Well, emotional development has changed over time. When Homo sapiens first emerged, emotional development was primarily driven by the need for survival. Fear, anger, and other primal emotions played crucial roles in hunting, avoiding danger, and forming early social groups. Empathy and cooperation likely emerged to support communal living, child rearing, and resource sharing. By the 20th century, as urbanization and industrialization reshaped societies, emotional development adapted to more nuclear family structures and less extended community support. Emotional self-control became more important in structured workplaces, influencing emotional regulation norms. So while our biology hasn't really changed, or changed very, very slowly by human standards, our emotional development needs have changed considerably. For a child born today to fit well into the modern world requires different influences than those available 5,000 years ago. And that's not always a good thing. Social media and digital communication have transformed emotional expression, sometimes fostering connection, but also leading to challenges like cyberbullying or emotional detachment. You could argue that the emotional development of today's child should prepare them for those challenges. Okay, so what about cognitive skill? Reading can prevent deficits in cognitive skill. Does that sound right? Those kinds of statements may well be supported by repeatable empirical evidence. They're probably true. But my question is, what happened to cognitive development before we could read? Was the cognitive development of the pre-reading human race really that bad? Or was it totally different? We didn't used to read. The printing press was invented by Gutenberg around 1440. Before that, books were handmade, hand-printed, very valuable, very expensive, precious things, limited to religious texts like the Bible that took 3 men to lift. Even after the printing press emerged, it was a long time before books became easily available. For a long time, it was only the very rich that could afford them. But by the 15th century, we see the emergence of the middle class, and suddenly in combination with the availability of books, or perhaps driving that availability, many more children were being exposed to reading. The first picture book for children emerged in the mid-17th century. This was the first time that reading in childhood became recognizable. By the 19th century, children's books became commonplace. What were people like before that time? How did we cope? What has the relative ease of access to books in childhood done to the overall cognitive development of the human race? No doubt we still told stories, sitting around the campfire to groups of children. Did that ancient storytelling have the same effect on cognitive development? So it seems oral storytelling often relied on rhythm, repetition, and rhyme, which helped children learn language patterns and retain information. Oral stories required active listening and recall. Unlike reading, where the text provides a reference, storytelling demanded that listeners remember plot points, characters, and morals. Many ancient stories presented moral dilemmas, challenges, or lessons, prompting children to think about solutions and consequences. Mythological tales and parables often conveyed complex concepts like justice, bravery, and empathy, encouraging cognitive reflection. But books have their own advantages. Books enable children to engage with stories independently, fostering self-directed learning and autonomy. And books offer a fixed narrative, allowing children to revisit the same story multiple times, deepening their understanding and their memory. Books provide exposure to a wider vocabulary and more complex sentence structures than oral storytelling. And importantly, reading books introduces children to written language, which is essential for literacy development. There's one more aspect you may have come across. Have you ever heard or read that kids with books in the house do better at school, university, in their careers, and in life? I've been hearing that for decades. You almost certainly have too. A 20-year study published in Social Science Research found that children raised in homes with at least 20 books gained an average of 3 more years of schooling compared to peers without books, regardless of parental education or income. Assuming that's true, which is a fair position, my question is, why? The obvious starting point is that children surrounded by books are more likely to develop an interest in reading from an early age. And as we've just seen, reading has a positive effect on cognitive skill and emotional development. But is it that simple? Just buy a lot of books, stick them on a shelf, and your kid grows into a well-rounded, productive member of society? Well, studies have shown that parents who own and value books often model reading behavior, demonstrating its importance and enjoyment. As a parent, you can't just go through the motions, you have to demonstrate reading behavior, and that means not just reading a lot yourself, but growing your own self through that reading. Growing up in a book-filled home often correlates with higher educational aspirations. Children come to associate books with knowledge and opportunity. We'd argue that association is almost more important than reading itself. That association will lead children exploring on their own, not just reading what's on their shelf because they've been directed to. A home filled with books conveys to children that learning and knowledge are important. This cultural emphasis encourages them to prioritize education and see academic success as a goal. The exact number isn't as important as creating a culture of reading. However, research indicates that having around 80 to 100 books at home provides significant benefits, with diminishing returns beyond that point. Homes with books often create a more intellectually stimulating atmosphere. Even if parents are not highly educated, the presence of books encourages conversations, curiosity, and questions. So in summary, there's a lot of scientific evidence to support reading to kids and encouraging them to read. If you can fill your house with books, you should. And don't forget, it doesn't hurt us adults to read more either. It's never too late. So get off YouTube for a while and pick up a book. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you like this video and consider subscribing. See you next time.